Hey there, micro friends. Welcome to another episode of Let's Talk Micro. As always, I'm so happy that you're here with me. And if this is the first time you're listening to Let's Talk Micro, well, hey, thank you for choosing us. I appreciate it. Okay, so this episode is 1 week after ASM Microbe, which was amazing. And I will be doing an episode about it, like a recap episode, like I do every year. As you know, on those type of episodes, I go over posters, talks, but it was such an amazing conference, and the live episode was amazing. So many of you went and watched it, so thank you again. It was just so rewarding being there in a room and seeing a lot of people. It was a great turnout. So seeing a lot of micro enthusiasts that took time. Microbe is very busy, so just the fact that some of you decided to spend 30 minutes listening to a podcast, I truly appreciate it. Thank you again. So stay tuned for a recap episode. So this week we are doing an episode of Micro Minutes. And for those of you that are first time listeners, Micro Minutes are some short episodes we do here in the podcast, and they're about 10 minutes long. And they tend to be a combination of what I have learned over my time at the bench. And, we pair that with the knowledge of microbiology. For example, we did one on McConkey, we did one on PEA, and they are very quick and to the point. So go back to the catalog and check out the previous ones. And that's what we're doing today, a micro minutes episode. Okay, so let's get started. And on today's episode, I will be going over three different cases slash scenarios where you perform identification testing and you get an ID. And those IDs are wrong. However, one thing that I want to say is that the results are wrong because of operator error, not because of the instrument or the type of identification. These systems here that I'm talking about, they are very reliable. They have been around for a long time. And once again, they're very reliable. But like anything, there are limitations. And that is something that we have discussed here before, which is, for example, let's take the Vitek cards, for example. When you're performing identification on them, there is a limited database of organisms, right? If you're trying to verify something that maybe is non-clean on the Molotov and you use a Vitek card, you have to make sure that organism is in that database. If not, there's the potential of getting the wrong identification. So the same goes for when you're setting an identification on this type of systems. You have to make sure that you have the proper organism, the proper gram stain for that particular test. And that is very common sense, right? You're not going to do a microdase disc on a gram negative rod. You're not going to do a catarrhalis disc on a gram positive cocci. So you have to make sure that the gram stain matches the test that you're using. And for the benefit of everyone, so we are all on the same page, once again, I mean that if you have an identification system that is designed for gram negative rods and you place a gram positive cocci in there, you have that potential of getting an erroneous ID, right? So that's what I mean. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump into the cases. And this is case number 1. So either you or someone in the microbiology lab, they set up a Vitek gram positive card and the result comes back as Kocuria. So what do you think about this? And the second case is related to the first one. So same scenario, someone in the lab, they set up in this case a Vitek gram negative identification card, and the result comes back as Sphingomonas. So what do you think? Should we just go ahead and accept those results? Accept that Kocuria, accept that Sphingomonas, and move on with our lives? Well, before we move on with our lives, we have to be careful and make sure that everything in that culture matches. Because when you get Kocuria and when you get Sphingomonas, there is the potential that the wrong organism was set up. Meaning that not in the case of Kocuria, a gram positive cocci was not set up on that card. And in the case of Sphingomonas, a gram negative rod was not set up in that card. And Kocuria and Sphingomonas, these are organisms that you can actually, you get in cultures. Kocuria is a gram positive cocci. Sphingomonas is a non fermenting gram negative rod. Colonies are like yellow, doesn't grow on McConkey. So there's a possibility that you will recover them in culture, but you have to keep some things in the back of your mind. And those are that there is a possibility that someone set up an organism assuming, for example, that it was a gram negative rod for the Vitek GN card, or they set up an organism assuming that it was a gram positive cocci on the GP card. And this is not the Vitek's fault, right? Those cards, they measure carbohydrate utilization, enzyme substrates. So if the reactions match something that it's on the database, it can give you an ID. And in cases like this, happens to be Sphingomonas or Kocuria. So when you get those IDs, and this is something that you should do, you have to do with all the cultures. You have to make sure everything matches. But especially with these two IDs, when you get them, make sure you review everything. Make sure that look at the plates, do a gram stain, and make sure that everything matches. And this is something that I have seen in my career. I have seen results of Sphingomonas, and even at one point in time, we received one from another lab, Sphingomonas for susceptibilities, and it was a gram positive rod. So that's what I'm talking about. When it comes to Kocuria, I have seen that after reviewing everything, the organism is a gram positive rod. And I also had a case once where it was a gram negative rod. So in the case of that Kocuria, the organism was not growing on McConkey. The person assumed it was a gram positive cocci. They set up the GP card, they got that ID, and they accepted it. So once again, when we're doing cultures, we have to make sure that everything matches. We do not assume. Gram stains are your best friend. Okay, so let's go ahead and go to case number 3. So this one was setting moldy, and the organism was growing in KV agar. So this was an anaerobic culture. And then the ID came back as Brucella. And I am not talking about like Ochrobacterium anthropi, which is, Brucella anthropi now. I am talking about Brucella. In this case, it was Brucella abortus. And those of you that work in the lab, you see that name, and right, it can be a little scary, it can be daunting. So we went ahead and, following the proper precautions, we did a gram stain on the organism, and it was the yeast. And what happened was that when moldy was being set up for this organism, a gram stain was not done, and bacteria was selected instead of fungi. And this is something with moldy that when you're setting it up, you have to tell it, is it bacteria or is it fungi? And bacteria was selected, and the spectra, I guess it matched a Brucella, and that's the ID that was released. So this was an user error. After the gram stain was reviewed, then moldy was performed, fungi was selected, and it came back as a candida species. So from these cases, one thing that is a constant and we continue learning is that gram stains are very important. So if you're not familiar with an organism, do a gram stain. Look at all the plates. Do not assume. Remember, some gram negative rods do not grow McConkey. Colonies that are white can be gram positive cocci, can be gram positive rods, can be yeast. So you have to keep in mind all these things when you are working cultures. Once again, do not assume. In these cases, people set up the identification card for the wrong organism, and then an erroneous ID is produced. And even worse, sometimes that ID is released, and that can affect the patient's treatment, right? So we don't want that. So, as microbiologists, we have to be thorough and we have to look at all the variables. And in addition to that, from this episode, just remember that if you see Sphingomonas or you see Kocuria, make sure you look at everything and it matches. But that's something I should be doing with all the cultures. And from my Brucella slash yeast case, please make sure that when you are setting moldy, if you're choosing bacteria as your target, make sure that it is a bacteria. If you're choosing yeast, make sure it is a yeast. And how do you do that? Well, some organisms you can tell from the plate what they are, but when unsure, do a gram stain. That's your best friend. So, in summary from this episode, make sure you're very thorough with your workups, match gram stain, match plates, and in a little drawer in the back of your mind, keep that, if you see Sphingomonas or Kocuria, make sure you take a second look before releasing that ID. And the second look is, right, looking at everything, plates, gram stain, and make sure that everything matches. And that, my friends, is the end of this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. It was very short to the point, which is what Micro Minutes episodes are intended to be: short, quick, and to the point. Okay, friends. So, as always, you can find us on any podcast platform. If you go to Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, Good Pods, we're right there. So, please subscribe to the podcast, download episodes, and if the Apple allows you to do so, please leave a review. Thank you so much for the support. As far as social media, you can find us on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Blue Sky Social as Let's Talk Micro, on X as Let's Talk Micro 1, LinkedIn as Luis Plaza. There's the email address, letstalkmicro@outlook.com, and there's the website, letstalkmicro.com, where you can find information about study resources, licensing information, episode updates, and more. So either via social media or via email or the website, you can give any feedback, any topic suggestions. They are always welcome and appreciated. If you want to support us in any way, you can do so via Venmo or via Buy Me a Coffee KOFI. Both links available on the show notes. And my dear friends, you know that learning about antibiotics can be difficult. So if you're looking to learn more about antibiotics, please check out www.learnantibiotics.com and the Learn Antibiotics book available on Amazon. These resources include cheat sheets, practice tests, games, and more, and they are being used by thousands of people worldwide and may be helpful for you or your colleagues. And as always, these are some great resources from Dr. Timothy Gauthier, a very passionate pharmacist. And as you know, the Let's Talk Micro podcast is supported by the American Society for Microbiology. To learn more about microbes, visit asm.org. And that, micro friends, is the end of this episode. I hope you enjoy learning about these cases. As always, I enjoy sharing this information with you. And please continue bringing that passion to what you do. It's so important. You do such great work. Once again, thank you to those of you that show up to the live episode during ASM Microbe. It was amazing. I appreciate you. Thank you again. And stay tuned. The episode will be released in a few weeks. So, as always, stay motivated, stay safe, and of course, continue talking micro. Until the next time. Bye.